Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Al Qualls here with Guys Talking Sports. We are back. I got my boy James Ross in with me right now. So James Earl Ross, what do you want me to call you by Earl, right?
Yeah, call me Earl.
Okay. So I got Earl Ross here. Earl, say what's going on. Say what's up to everybody out there.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
All right. We're gonna get started. We haven't really got the last time we talked. We was talking about the whole Ray Rice situation. Maybe about 2 weeks, about a week or two ago. So we haven't even jumped into the whole Adrian Peterson thing. So, I know it's long overdue, and everybody's probably tired of hearing about the Adrian Peterson case or NFL as a whole. But we're gonna just dive right into it, like we just heard it. So, as you all are aware of now, Adrian Peterson right now is going through a whole issue in court, legal matter in court, where they're talking about what he did when he disciplined his 4-year old son, hitting him with a switch, and there was marks to prove it and everything. Originally, the league suspended him for the first game, but um, after much talk from social media that's out there. They made him inactive, still getting paid, sort of like a suspension with pay. So just gonna just just let's get it started and talk about this. So, Earl, what is your takes about this whole thing?
My take on it, from all discussions I've had over the past is that, I mean, it's always that fine line of, disciplining your kids and how far do you take it? And I know, at least for myself, hey, I've gotten whoopings, spankings, whatever, and I've even had to go out and get a switch. So, I think it's for, I guess, Adrian Peterson, I guess he was just doing things based on how he felt you know, how he was raised, he was kind of doing the same things that he felt that, was appropriate to him. Um, I agree that, it was excessive, the treatment that he gave his 4-year-old son. We don't know all the parameters about how everything occurred, but, this wasn't a first time incident. So, it's that very fine line as far as how far do you take disciplining your child and to the point where you're spanking them. Is it considered abuse if you're going too far out? And, even though I've gotten, hit with a switch, and I've probably gotten some welts back in the day, it's always, how far do you take it and, where is that line drawn? And I think that in my opinion, crossed that line, but I don't think to him he felt he crossed the line based on how he was raised and the treatment. But I think one of the calls he said he kind of think either spoke to his baby's mother and said, I think I went too far. So I think at the time he didn't maybe at the time he didn't think he was, but then once, it happens and you look and you're like, oh wow, look what I've done, then I think it all kind of like hits back and yeah, I don't think he meant to intentionally, abuse his child, but I think it just maybe just went over the line for that particular for those times.
Yeah, I I completely agree with you. I think Adrian Peterson was at a. I mean, I'm not saying that I condone the fact of what he did, especially to a 4-year old. I'm not saying that at all. But I understand, especially because we're in a culture where we've been used to it. It's nothing. Unfortunately, it's not the norm. I mean, it's the norm. We've been through it, so mean, I'm pretty sure that he's been through. He's just teaching. He's disciplining his kids the same way his parents disciplined him. So I, while like you said, it was a little bit maybe a little bit too extreme, but I understand. He's setting a standard. I really believe that that's something that he has. He takes full ownership on. I don't, like I said, I don't agree with the excessiveness of it, but I understand, and I just think that where we're living right now, in the time that we're living, a lot of people don't understand that. Um, some people say, yeah, well, I never hit my kids, and they do things for them, how they seem fit. But everybody is not, going to follow the same pattern that another person is going to follow. So like I said, it's not just, and it's not really a South or thing. It happens all over the U.S. And no matter what culture you're in, there's people that act is I mean, any person would, that's happened to them. That's how they're going to discipline their kids. So, um, I really thought that, like I said, I didn't think of it as being a issue until I saw the photos. When I saw the photos, I was like, okay, I guess I can understand where they're coming from. But when you first hear about it, everybody's like, that's the norm. I mean, like, why would they suspend him for something that he should be doing? So
Yeah, and I think that the whole the atmosphere that the NFL and sports in general is in right now is very heightened because of you guys, I know you guys talked about the Ray Rice situation in the last podcast, but with the Ray Rice situation, how Roger Goodell handled it and how violence with sports figures in the whole, I think everything is hypersensitive. So you know where the situation where you hear about him possibly abusing his child might not have been brought to such attention before, because trust me, I'm pretty sure he's not the only father that plays sports that probably crossed that line, and maybe even parents might have went to the police about it. But now the way everything is, it's hypersensitive. You got to be very careful how the NFL approaches these situations, and you know, I think this is probably is going to open a lot of people's eyes, but it's not a sports thing. So let's not, get it twisted that these sports athletes just wilding out. It's a cultural thing across, across the country. So let's not say, it's the quote unquote angry black athlete or the ignorant black athlete. It's America as a whole.
yeah, it is. And what makes it interesting is the fact that, again, a lot of people don't for whatever reason, they feel as though that they need to voice their opinion about something that really doesn't concern. I'm not going to say it really doesn't concern, but, you know, it, it's the whole thing in general. Like, everybody's complaining about how certain people do things, how they, run their lives. And again, it's kind of the NFL's, I guess, the players' fault for bringing it to the spotlight, because if he wouldn't have never got, if he would have never got arrested, or, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this from Adrian Peterson's side. And same thing with the video and with Ray Rice. And I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of NFL players that does the same thing, and that would be in both situations, in both Ray Rice situation, that's probably doing that. And at Adrian Peterson's does the same thing Adrian Peterson does on a regular basis. So um, I don't know. It's a slippery slope with people getting involved in certain types of aspects. I'm wondering if it was just any Joe Schmo that did something like that, would we really have this much of an outcry for it?
I think you probably would have had some kind of outcry, but base being how it was Adrian Peterson, the NFL star running back. Of course, that's going to get probably a lot more press if he was just like a second or third string running back or somebody off the practice squad that that did something. But it's Adrian Peterson, and I've always told people, I was like, before you know, get self-righteous about, how he's raising his kids and, what he did. I was like, be sure your own house is in order before you start, talking about other folks.
I completely agree with that. I mean, because it's funny how people always criticizing other people when their situation is not as up to par. I mean, it's not, I'm pretty sure if the roles were reversed, a lot of people would be criticizing how that person, would be handling things the same way, even, and maybe even worse. So it's a slippery slope, and you do have to make sure that your focus is on make sure that you're taken care of before you can focus and tell criticize about other people because you don't know their situation where they're going through. So and I'm not like again, I'm not condoning what Adrian, how I mean how bad it was, but disciplining your kids, the kids may need it, not to that extreme level, per se, but they may need that discipline for them to act, be where they need to be to get on the straight and narrow. There's a lot of people that's been disciplined like that and turned out to be okay.
Yeah, and it's just it all depends on the person, the parents, the child, and like you said, I agree with you, completely. I don't agree with those methods like that, and it was excessive, but some people have gotten far worse
Exactly.
and still turned out good. I know we've gotten our fair share of beatings, and we got some doozies from my dad at bombs, but I turned out pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of the communication about this is just a lot of people are saying defending saying hey I get beatings all the time, and it's not I got beatings, I don't see a issue with it, and like I said, I understand that, but you also have to understand that this was a little bit excessive for a 4-year-old. I mean, we're living in a culture now where this is gonna this is just how it is. Like that's unacceptable for most today's generation, and whether we believe it or not, because I have to admit when before when I maybe before my son was born, I was saying if I ever had kids, I'm gonna make sure that they're on point from day one. Now that I have one, my mindset changed, but it's not like I'm not saying, well, I'm gonna be honest, like I don't do the, I mean, me personally, I don't do the timeout thing. That's not how I roll. I don't. That to me, I don't find um like my style. But I'm not gonna say that. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that I'm gonna take a belt and pop them in the head or anything like that. But everybody has their own different way, and everybody keep for whatever reason may think that whether it's right or wrong, they feel as though that their way is always should be the model. And you have people that's talking about it, saying, "Hey, look, I never beat my kids, so I feel as though that this is completely wrong." And there's a middle ground to this. And with Adrian Peterson, I thought that it was just so much media hype on this because the Minnesota Vikings already handled the situation when they suspended them that first game. But when the media added into it, it was more, well, since the media is pressuring us and we're losing sponsorships, feel as though that I feel as though that we gotta do something more. And I have to admit, like this is an issue that I have. Like as an owner of a team, you should never feel pressured. If you make a decision, whether it's a good or a bad decision, it's your decision. Like the fact that you lose sponsorships over this, or sponsorships are being suspended because of the simple fact that they don't agree with the decision that you make. I find that crazy.
Yeah, and to me, it seemed like right on the heels of how things were handled with Ray Rice, all the sponsors don't want to seem in a bad light. So yeah, you had the Minnesota Vikings suspended for the one game. Then they said that, well, we're going to let them play until court proceedings go and there's some kind of judgment ruled down, which is usually in the past how Roger Goodell has handled things. He will let the judicial system, go through their process, and then once, whatever crime someone did, they came back with their ruling. Then Roger Goodell came down with his ruling. So to me, it was like the Vikings did it. Then it was like they made the decision. The sponsors don't want to be seen in the same light of, not doing anything the same way as sponsors did with the Ravens or Ray Rice. So they automatically said, "Whoa, we're going to, we're going to pull sponsorships." And then the Ravens went ahead and said, okay, well, in second thought, we're just going to not let him play where he's on the exempt list, or basically, suspended with pay. So, yeah, I mean, I agree that you want to make sure that you know, get all the information out, and the pictures don't do any of it any justice. So, my question is, if you're going to just put him out for one game, let it be. But if you were going to put him out for the whole season, that should have been a decision right from the jump.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, like, I would have been okay if they said that from the jump. We'll suspend you with pay. Then it wouldn't be an issue because you making that decision yourself. I just feel as though that sponsorships are always pressuring people to do something when, you know, and granted, I understand that that's where they get the money from. Don't get me wrong, but you know, that can't be the only, it's sponsorships. And I'm sorry, but from an owner's perspective, or if I'm managing a team and if the sponsorships is telling me, hey, look, you gotta do something else with this, you know, I would love to see an owner stand up and say, hey, look, we made this decision. We talked about this after all is said and done. We made this decision and we're going to stick by this decision. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, if you don't feel as though that's the way that, if you feel as though you want to discontinue, it's no big issue. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that they could find another sponsorship. Like,
yeah,
it shows, it shows that, like, if you're caving in to, you're caving into sponsorship who's caving into social media.
yeah. And it's make a decision, but try to make the decision the right decision from the jump, and then just roll with it. But
No,
to me, I think, this is always going back to, and a question I have is, does Roger Goodell, provided nothing else comes out this whole season, does Roger Goodell keep his job, going next year and the year after that and the year after that?
yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest. The last podcast I talked about, I felt as though that Roger Goodell should keep his job. Off of the simple fact is that, of course he made some bad decisions. If anything, I thought he would probably be reprimanded for his actions. But I really thought that he should keep his job. Now I do not know. Um, I I'm more lenient. I Because the thing about it is that he's not a person that's able to handle the situation. He's not the take charge type of person. He's basically learning on the fly. Everything that happens, it seems as though he makes his ruling when something else goes wrong. He'll change it or make another ruling or apologize. He hasn't done anything in my eyes to take an initiative to say this is what we're going to do as the commit as as a commissioner, this is what we propose that we're going to do, and the teams need to follow it or anything like that. He hasn't done anything. He's just been so apologetic. And now I'm starting to understand more why people want to see him go, especially the players, because he's being like quote unquote two-faced about, being all this harsh on them, but not being harsh on himself type of person. So I have to admit, I'm now 50-50. I would not be surprised, if they do, if he does get let go. I could understand it. So he's not really done anything to even want to try to keep his job, in my eyes.
Yeah, as with you at first, I thought maybe some reprimand should have came his way, but I didn't think he should have. Initially, I didn't think it was job. Now, I mean, the more information that comes out about how the whole Ray Rice case was handled, and what kind of suggestions he took from the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens saying they suggested 2 games. Roger Goodell went along with it. Then he's all these information about how he's golfing buddies with Steve Bisciotti, the Ravens owner and everything. So it looks like he was trying to, I guess, be lenient to the point where he was just trying to just say, okay, let's give it a 2 games and let's just hope this whole thing goes away. Because when Roger Goodell was brought in, he was brought in to be the new sheriff in the town. He was brought in to clean up the players' behavior on the field, off the field. With the Pac-Man Joneses and everybody else that was, doing stuff, acting crazy at the clubs. He was brought in to clean up that kind of behavior and to clean up some stuff off, on the field behavior as well. He wasn't brought in to deal with, you know, social issues to this point where you have domestic violence or you have, child abuse. He wasn't brought in for that. So to me, he didn't have any depth of how to handle that. So, he just kind of, I mean, there's been, domestic abuse going on in NFL before his tenure and during his tenure that hasn't come to light. But it looks like he was just trying to basically, say, yeah, well, we don't want to really deal with it. Let's just, just hope this goes away. And we give him 2 game suspension. And for a time, it looked like that was going to work. Unfortunately, when the tape came out, which, well, I don't even want to get into that, but that's a whole different story about how and why the tape came out than when it did. When the tape came out, it was like now everyone is trying to, cover their asses. Then the Baltimore Ravens are looking one way, NFL's looking bad. Casinos said they gave it out. So now you're getting all this information that came about that somebody's lying about what's going on. So I don't think Roger Goodell loses his job this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's quote unquote asked to step down after next year.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that he's getting that now. I'm just wondering, the question is he actually going to step down? Um, is he really gonna be like, you know what, I did what I can, and I don't think it may not be enough, but I mean, I'm more interested to see whether if he is, given that chance, the opportunity to step down, will he actually step down?
Yeah, someone's going to have to follow, quote unquote, fall on their sword for this whole situation and go because, the public wants, blood at this point. And Roger Goodell has been basically, basically the point man for the owners. The owners haven't really got much heat outside of Steve Bichetti with this whole thing. So he's been taking point, but eventually someone's going to have to, fall on their sword to satisfy the public need for someone to lose their job so they can kind of get, quote unquote, back to business. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's Roger Goodell. It may not. Maybe somebody else might, lose a job here and there, but someone's going to have to go in order to satisfy the public. If not, I think the owners going to might start getting a little bit more heat from sponsors. And when the owners start losing some money, then that's when Roger Goodell is going to have to go for the betterment of the brand per se.
But here's the question, like, again, we go back with the sponsorship. So I mean, so the sponsorship, if nothing happens, let's say for example nothing happens, nobody fall, like you said, falls on their sword. Sponsorships is going to actually ask for Roger Goodell, or is going to try to convince, they'll lose their sponsorships if they don't get Roger Goodell fired. Like I don't see, I can't see how sponsorships have that much control on getting the owner, the commissioner of the NFL fired.
Well, it's all about the dollar. I mean, you see how quickly they turned around and the Minnesota Vikings suspended Adrian Peterson once Alzheimer Bush and the bank, I think MT Bank and the other ones were just kind of saying, yeah, we might start pulling or we don't like how things are going, but probably secretly on the phone I was like, look, you need to do something because if we're going to look bad, we're going to pull our money from you. The owners don't want to lose that money. And when enough owners start feeling their pockets getting lighter or possibly get lighter, then they might have to take some kind of action to kind of quell, public opinion. Not just saying that at the end of the day it's going to be Roger Goodell, but if some more information comes out that doesn't look good to the NFL, as a whole, and if these, the stories don't go away and they can get back to the business of football and making money because that's what they're all in at the end of the day to do. If things don't quiet down and and get back to quote unquote normal, someone's going to have to someone's going to take the fall for this.
I guess I'm just amazed the fact that sponsors have that much power that I'm not aware of when it comes to stuff like that. Because, you know, I I understand, I understand the whole sponsorship thing. It's just, I mean, it you want to be represented in the best light possible. I get that. I understand that. And when someone is, throws negativity into that spotlight, it can mess you up. But I just I'm to be honest, I'm still at all a little bit shocked the fact that sponsorships can have that authority to do that. But then when I think about it, it's the same thing that happened with Donald Sterling and the LA Clippers. So when sponsorships started pulling back, that's when NBA took notice to try, to eventually boot Donald Sterling out. So um, it's I I I I guess I can understand it. I can understand it. I mean, as an owner, I would be, you would think that they would have a lot more say in the matter. Like, or they would say to themselves, hey, look, I don't want to see an owner, do not give in to the pressure of social media or their sponsorships. I would love to see an owner just say, you know what, I made this decision, I stand by this decision, and, that's it in the discussion. It seems as though that all these, owners are starting to become afraid of the sponsorships of something that they are owning. Like I find that very fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's always down. The bottom line is always the dollar, and the dollar rules. And when you start losing some money, or the threat of losing some monies, then you're going to act.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I mean, if at this particular point, here's what's it's funny about this because regardless of the fact, if you this whole the thing about Adrian Peterson is or any athlete, when you start to lose that trust, when sponsorships, excuse me, when sponsorships want to do something as far as take money away from you, or what I'm saying, like if the sponsorships are saying, hey, this is not enough, we want you to suspend them for the rest of the season or suspend this athlete for the rest of the season. Don't they realize is that these athletes are understanding like, hey, look, this particular sponsor is trying to, cut my way of living. They trying to stop me from making my money. Don't you think there may be some backlash at the end with the athletes and some of the sponsorship?
Yeah, and I think there could be some backlash. I mean, and it can cut both ways. I mean, you might have some players that might not be willing to play for a team with an owner who is willing to at the blink of an eye sell them out, or just cut ties with them. But at the end of the day, it is these athletes making these millions of dollars, and more so in the NFL, you can get cut the next day and someone else can take your spot. So the athletes are only going to say but so much. The owners can have a little bit more leeway because they're going to keep continuously make money. Yeah, they can lose a sponsor here and there, and they can always get somebody back. But if you lose one of your big money sponsors that donated, millions of dollars to get that stadium built or get that expansion done, you're going to, take heed to their calls when they call. And what are you going to listen to? The guy that's putting millions of dollars in your pocket, from the sponsors, or the player that might generate you a little bit of monies here, but not as much money as the sponsor going to give you over a longer period of time, depending on who the person is, I should say.
Yes, because I was about to say because I mean athletes are looking at stuff like this. Like if I'm an athlete, I mean let's call it like I say, Adrian Peterson already knows that he wants to play in Dallas. When this whole thing is blows over, what's to stop him from saying, you know what, I'm taking my talents someplace else? And athletes is watching this. So from an athlete standpoint, yeah, you can be loyal to the sponsorships if you want. But from an athlete standpoint, no athlete is going to want to come to Minnesota when they know that the owners is going to is going to stay with there's no balance. They figure that it's going to favor the sponsorships more than they would favor the athletes.
Yeah, and that's going to be that's why these next couple of weeks and how things happen, I think is in the NBA, maybe in the NFL, I think is going to really, kind of dictate that point, that very good point that you just brought up right now. So we're just gonna have to kind of wait and see. I don't have no answer for that. Like I said, I can see a team maybe giving a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady, Drew Brees, one of the high, the high, dollar making guys, a wee bit more slack than some other guys, but
Hmm.
not that much. They might listen to those guys a little bit more, but like you said, I think this whole thing with Adrian Peterson coming on the back of how the Ray Rice thing was all handled, I think that Minnesota Vikings just kind of felt pressured not to fall to that same pigeonhole as the Ravens did. So when they kind of cut him, you hear they're not talking about the Minnesota Vikings at all. They're still on the Baltimore Ravens because that was not handled well at all.
No, not at all, not at all. And and that, I guess that's the difference. Um, I mean, I exclude the Ravens because everything was already on the table. You have videotape, you have evidence, ironclad evidence of what happened. So I don't, like players is not gonna say, defend a guy when they see the videotape right there. Um, I but from what I mean, I'm just saying in general, like, you have to understand, like, when you lose, you have to maintain that balance. That's, I mean, the owner is gonna have they have to maintain that balance, keeping their players happy, keeping the sponsorships happy, because it's the only way that they're gonna make money. If you lose one or the other, it doesn't matter what happens at this particular point. You're gonna lose money down the road as a whole. Because even if you be more loyal to the sponsors, no athlete is going to want to see that. They're going to move someplace. Good athletes. I mean, you're talking about your best player, for example. And once, if Adrian Peterson was to leave because of all this drama, you know what I'm saying? What does the Minnesota, what players does the Minnesota Vikings have would make it relevant for them to be a playoff contending team? Like,
Yeah,
it's a,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right about that, which is why, and I'm unfortunately have to make this last point before I have to bounce, but that's why I found it very interesting that in the cases of both the Carolina Panthers and the Minnesota Vikings, they put them both on this exempt list, which came out. No one knew about this. So basically, they're not playing. They're still in a contract getting paid, so they're not playing. So they're not in fear of at the end of the season or whenever this thing comes, whenever this issue comes down, of being cut, and then the team can swoop in and get them. So I guess those are mechanisms that the team can say, hey, we're going to do this for you. We're still going to pay you. You can't sign with AP. You can't sign with Dallas, or the other guy can sign whoever you want to. So I guess there are some ways to kind of tell the player, like, look, we're doing this right now, but don't, we're going to still going to keep you on. But you're right. I mean, how do the players look at this? I mean, how do the players feel that the sponsors are driving the ship more so than the owners?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, how the players feel when the sponsorship is driving more than the owners and the players themselves, because the players believe that they're the ones that should be running this. But that's another discussion that we could talk about. Um, Again, I'd like to thank Earl Ross for joining me for this podcast. Man, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry we got off to a late start, man. I was having technical difficulties, but it's all good. I'll get it straightened out next time.
It's no problems, no worries at all. Again, you can catch us, guys, talking sports. You can catch us on iTunes. You can catch us on Twitter, Google Hangouts Plus. Circle us if circle me, circle Earl, circle anybody that's on our group. We're gonna get started. We'll have another discussion next week. Again, you can reach me at IamALQARLES on Twitter. You can also subscribe right here. There's a little button that you don't see, but will see shortly. But you can just subscribe right there. And I'd like to thank everybody for checking us out, all the viewers that came in to check us out as well. I really appreciate it. Again, this is Al Coral. So, guys, later.